Welcome, everybody. My name is Simon Head. I'm the director producer of Subversives, the history of Lowest to the Low. Welcome to the show. This is episode number 7, I think. David Bottrill goes without saying. He's a world renowned record producer who has recorded records with Peter Gabriel. He's recorded with Tool. He's recorded with all sorts of bands. And he is the producer of AGITPOP, the one of the first real major label releases, the one that actually came out properly. This is probably the one that had the most, like, gotta get all these questions and make sure that you're using this person's time effectively. Want to let you know how you can get this movie. You can still rent it on Apple TV. If you don't have Apple TV, you can get it on YouTube pay-per-view all around the world, from what I understand. If you don't have a computer, then you're not watching this, and you're stuck in some time zone that doesn't have computers, I apologize. You can buy the Blu-ray. Blu-rays are the things that they're like these little discs. They look like this, but they're like, you put them into a slot and they play the things. And you can actually buy it on Amazon anywhere around the world. It ships out of Canada through Unobstructed View. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, because this YouTube channel has been around for many, many years, and I haven't really done much with it. So I'm really trying now to see what I can actually do with this YouTube channel to be able to take it to the next level. Because if I have enough subscribers and I can make some ad revenue, I don't need to charge money for people to watch the movie. That's the plan, the utopian scheme of things. Thanks for David for doing the interview. Thanks for being part of it. And like all the interviews, he's in it for about this much. He has a really good quote in it about Lois Low having a social code of conduct. And I thought for some reason someone had said the exact same thing, but it was such a resonant phrase that, it's in the movie. Enjoy this episode of the long-form interviews with David Bottrill, and enjoy. The first time you heard Lowest of the Low?
The first time I heard Lowest to the Low really was when I met up with Ron to talk about a project, and he'd sent me some of his music from the past. I was out of Canada for the better part of 20 years, living in England and New York, and so when I heard his music, it was sort of a new revelation to me. Of course, the style of music that they had was something that I was always into as a kid, so I'd sort of grown up with it, but unfortunately missed most of the early career of Lowest of the Low, just having been out of the country.
So you didn't know much about the band's history then? You would have sort of had
No.
to play catch up.
I did have to play catch up, so I knew some of their earlier contemporaries, like the L'Étranger and sort of bands like that in the early 80s, but I really didn't know very much about them, so I had to do a little bit of research when I was approached by Ron.
Would that have been a benefit to you to be able to start from a fresh canvas rather than having any sort of understanding about what you think you'd be getting yourself into?
I find that it is actually a benefit for me to not really know too much about a band's history. When I make a record with somebody or I work on a project, I don't like to have preconceived ideas of what the band's initial strengths were or what their songwriting style was like before. I always like to kind of start a bit with a fresh slate, so we're starting from scratch, knowing that they've had a past career and they've had success before, or had quality work done before. I like to kind of build something from scratch rather than start with, well, this band sounds like this, so let me try to make them sound like that. I would prefer to just go, which way is the music taking us?
Yeah. And we'll follow up a little bit on AGITPOP, but we'll get the sort of set questions out of the way. The band obviously has very strong ethics about what they feel is right and wrong to the band, what they feel they should be inserting themselves into business-wise, and who they work with. The question is, do you think that's obviously it's a benefit to one's moral compass, but do you think would it be a detriment to their career had they not maybe compromised a little bit?
I think really with any career, whether it's music or business, you always have to look at yourself in the mirror at night and sleep well. So I think that, sure, Lowest of the Low could have, quote unquote, sold out to corporate sponsorship or something like that. But I respect a band who's aware of their alternatives and make those decisions in a way that they can live with. I don't. Yeah, I guess bands could, financially do better if they made certain decisions and compromised some of their ethical codes. And some bands do that. With Ron and Lowest of the Low, I think they made a conscious decision of this is what's important to them in life. And this is, in Ron's particular case, and I guess other members of the band, how they wish to present themselves to their children and what their legacy is going to be. So you make those decisions, and hopefully you live with them and are happy with them as you reach a later stage in life.
Yeah, one might say that we might not be talking about this had they maybe played some different types of, made some different decisions earlier.
Sure, sure. But I think that, life is a set of decisions, and they all lead you to this very point. So I think you have to own your decisions in life, and if you're happy with where you are in life, sure, you might have made different decisions along the way, but if you are in a good space and you're happy with the way things are going, then those decisions were correct for the most part.
So, cut to, I think it was 2017? 16? 17?
17.
17,
Yeah.
when they signed a major record label
Mhm.
deal. A thing that would have been completely unheard of in the early 90s. What do you think attributed to that type of, I know, and I think you know, but obviously a person like Steve Kane would be a person that you could do business with in the major. And I think that, to me, you can answer it yourself, but it feels like that's the only reason why they did it, is because it was like Steve Kane's sort of final gift to the music scene.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Look, Steve Kane is one of the most ethically sound people I've ever met in the music industry and in life in general. He's become a really good friend because he works with me on the board of directors of Make Music Matter, the charity that I chair. But I think that's probably why Ron and the band decided this is actually a person with an ethical code that I can work with in an industry that's not exactly known for its strong ethics.
Do you know about the letter of resignation that Steve Kane put to the promotions department? Like, Ron wrote this satirical letter.
Oh, I know vaguely something about it. Yeah, I don't know the whole story, but
it created a bit of an issue, obviously, as it would with major labels, kind of near as what they did back in the 90s. Like,
right.
They wore shirts like at a showcase that says "Corporate rock sucks cock," and it's
well,
kind of like,
I think Ron likes to subvert from within, so or at least he in his later part of his career, he's decided to subvert from within.
I love that quote, by the way, because it's called Subversives.
Right.
So recording, the process, working with the band. Maybe you start from kind of soup to nuts, like how you sort of met up with Ron and how it all started getting together, because they were going to go in a direction with Garth Richardson and changed it because they met you, and that was sort of the big, oh, we don't need to go tell fart jokes. We can actually come and work with somebody.
You know what? I really love Garth. Garth is a fantastic human being. He's very funny. He's an amazing producer. I feel badly. I didn't know what the whole relationship that they had going at the time. Ron approached me and we went for a coffee on Ossington and just started talking about music and talking about bands. And I told him a little of my history and he told me a little of their history. And we talked about bands that we grew up loving. The Clash are an obvious reference, things like that. We just hit it off so well, I think right from the start, that he thought, I'd like to make a record with this guy. So they'd been in talks, I found out later, with Garth. And, Garth has a sense of humor and he's funny and he's, musically incredible. He's done amazing records. I think they just, being personally in front of him at a coffee shop talking about music probably made them think, well, he's in Toronto, we're in Toronto. we don't have to go to Vancouver, whatever the reasons. I don't think there was there's a quality difference. Garth makes amazing things. I hopefully make good records as well. So I think it was just as much geography as anything. And just, like I said, you meet somebody, you're sitting in a coffee shop, you're talking about the music that you both loved as a kid. You talked about your ethics and style of your political beliefs or whatever. With Ron, that's very important. Do you believe in equality for people? Do you believe in a social safety net that we have in Canada? Do you believe in things like that, or do you have other set of beliefs? And I think the fact that we aligned so well on a number of those things. I'm not nearly, of course, as radical as Lois of the Low can and have been in the past, but I still share the same general outlook on life. I think that's maybe why they ended up choosing me over Garth.
So recording, the process of working through the music and the songs, how was that experience?
Well, then Ron sent me, once we decided to make the project together, he sent me all the demos of everything, and I listened to them, and like I do, I have notebooks, and I write things out, and I chart things out, and so I make suggestions. We got into a rehearsal place down on Sororan that they worked at. We got in there, and we just did a bunch of rehearsals, and they played through the songs, and I made suggestions, and they took some on and didn't take some on, and that's the way production works. And then we booked Union Sound and made the record there, and it's a fantastic studio. I love working there, and the band loved working there, and we were doing it sort of in the winter time and driving home in the snow, and it was great because actually it was really great in that when we were working on the project, Ron would often need a ride home, and because he lives close to me, we'd get to just chat in the car on the way home and sort of deconstruct the session that we had done, or make plans for the next day, or just talk about hockey, one of those things. So it was a great bonding process, the whole thing. And it's really nice because now I consider, most of the band, and in fact all the band, really good friends now.
Yeah. Do you find their process is obviously different from band to band to band, but what's sort of unique to their process of being in a band in the studio?
I think that the fact that this band has been around for so long together, they're such good friends. They have reached the stage. It's like an old marriage. You reach a stage in life where you're a symbiotic relationship now, and the suggestions in this band come from different areas. There's one clear leader of the band, and that's Ron, of course, but it's not an autocracy, right? There's suggestions all get listened to. This is the kind of thing that I insist upon when I make a project with somebody, that there's a lot of creative people in the room. Everybody has ideas, and everybody's ideas should get listened to and tried with enthusiasm. So for example, if somebody comes up with a suggestion to try a section in a different way, or something, somebody in the band might not think that's going to work, but I insist that everybody, and I think this is the way that works with that band intrinsically anyway, that everybody tries that idea and plays it with enthusiasm and with intent. Because if you have an idea and somebody's just not playing it very well, because I think, well, this isn't going to work, so I'm not really going to play very well, then of course the idea won't work. Sometimes you're surprised by an idea that you don't think is going to work, but when it's played with enthusiasm and gusto, then actually it either is a great idea or leads you to something else. So, but I think this band has reached that already in its creative process, that they come up with all kinds of different ideas. Everybody plays it and tries out the idea, and then the room will know whether it's working or not. And I don't think it makes it difficult to make decisions amongst the band, because the general feeling is, I think everybody comes at it with positivity. They try the idea. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, we move on to something else. So I think that it's nice to see that within that band, they have this great symbiotic relationship and respect for each other and love for each other, that they're able to create sort of, not effortlessly, but it's never, the roadblocks that come along or the walls to climb seem less of a challenge, because they're all seemingly pulling together.
Yeah, and respect is the key word there, because you have to respect someone for coming up with an idea, and you have to respect them by offering up your interpretation of their
Sure.
ideas, and it's very, very important. And my whole thing that comes to mind seems to be agendaless. There's no real agenda.
Yeah,
It seems to be whatever's best for the music of the song.
that's it.
And I think only age determines that type of workflow.
Yes, I think you get to this point in life, and for most people, your ego's sanded down a bit, right? And you're able to put any preciousness away, so that when ideas come through, you're able to look at them with an objective eye and understand that it's only people are only coming up with these ideas for betterment of the music, not to shoehorn in their idea.
Yeah.
So.
And then it was mixed right in this very location.
It was mixed right here. Yep. This is my mixing studio. I've had it for 10 years, 10 plus years. Yeah, I just did everything here.
Sorry for adding questions here, but I'm
That's
now
okay.
in the flow. Was there any notes from the label?
No, not really. In fact, during the making of the process, during the making of the record, I wasn't as close with Steve as I am now. So they kind of left us to our own devices. I think trusting in Ron and myself that we're going to deliver something that is sellable, is lowest of the low for sure. I'm very proud of that record, actually. I think it's got a lot of really strong qualities. I don't know, I've never seen sales numbers of it per se. I don't kind of keep up with that, but I think creatively we made something that's very strong.
Yeah. And politically, I think it hit all the right moments of understanding what was happening south of the border, what was happening politically, what seems to be happening here now in Canada. But it sort of spoke to this I think, a lot of the political parties.
Sure. I mean, with this band, you cannot separate the politics from the music. That's it's so intrinsically linked with the band and their moral and ethical code that you couldn't strip it away. So yeah, I mean, they're going to tell the stories. They're going to shed the light on what they think is right about the world and what's wrong about the world.
Okay. I think we spoke a little bit about how the band interacts. That's great. How, and I think you even spoke to the fact how you would bring up ideas and how they would either accept or reject. And I think you spoke pretty at length to that, unless you have something else to add about sort of how your process with that. I mean, I think you kind of hit it.
I think I kind of covered it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the response to the release. Now, were the expectations met? I mean, I think you said it was one that you're proud of the record, but do you think on points of success commercially, success artistically, success, these are different versions of success, but do you think it was received well by the industry, by the fans?
The only feedback that I can get from fans really is when I go see them play and people sing along. So that means they have the record, or they know the record, they've listened to it, and they like it. As far as commercial success, honestly, I really haven't followed it, and I don't generally do that with records that I do. It's not something I'm unaware of that needs to happen, but I think that if you're making a strong creative product, and you've got something that is within certain parameters of commercial necessity, lengths, sort of structures, things like that. I find that at that point it's kind of out of my hands, and so I don't really follow the commercial sales numbers or whatever chart positions, that sort of thing. If I do find out about it and it's positive, it's great. I just don't really follow that much from that business standpoint. It's probably a failing of mine in that I don't do that, but I've always had better relationships with bands and with sort of creative output people than I have with record company business people. Not that I don't dislike them or I don't dislike the process. I understand it's a business. I just never really followed it very well. So I don't know how commercially successful it was or wasn't. I know only that from a band standpoint and from my standpoint, I think we created something that had the potential to be successful commercially.
Now, I have a question. What do you think makes a hit song and hit record? Like, what is
Yeah.
I have my own personal point of view on it, but it's
If I knew what made a hit record, I'd be a lot wealthier. And I think that's the case. I mean, look, I've had conversations with both creatives and record company people, and most of them say, you know, their success ratio is below 30% on what they think is going to be successful. So really, that's not a great batting average. Well, I mean, I guess 300 is a good batting average, but still, it's not like, well, I know that this is going to make it successful. What I do know is that if a record company piles a whole boatload of money behind something, eventually it'll be reasonably successful. The chances are certainly much higher, right? But if, you know, I always look at a record like, you know, OK Computer from Radiohead, right? You look at it initially and you think, well, this doesn't sound like it would be a commercially successful record, but I know for a fact that, you know, Capitol in the States plowed a whole bunch of money behind it, you know, forced it down towards people, and eventually people were like, oh yeah, this is actually really good, because it is an amazing album. It just doesn't seem like it's, you know, a pop song record and that it would be that successful. It became that, but it took a lot of investment to get it there. So that's the only recipe for success, or recipe for potential success, that I know of. You know, I know a lot of great creative projects that I've worked on, that other people have worked on, that are amazing, that never saw the light of day, only because they just didn't seem to get the right marketing support.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with anything, but my feeling is that if you can have 50,000 people that think like you have a much better success rate, because 50,000 people can now, that's sort of a watermark or a benchmark of like, here's 50,000 people like this, we can make 500 million people. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that spawn of having people think like you and understand things with lyrics and music. But this guy, it probably has nothing to do with this. More of a podcast conversation thing.
Yeah.
So obviously the band's gone through new members. Alexander is the last, well, one of the original members, even since two bands before, like since the early 80s. Obviously, Shakespeare in My Butt is sort of like this sort of like albatross over their head. But do you think, and there was some magic behind that record that a lot of people have spoken at length about, but do you think now that the magic is similar, better than it was in what you're understanding, from your from your understanding?
You know, I think that it's having a successful record as your first release, and it becoming this legendary thing. I mean, look, you've got your whole life to write your first record, right? And then you're on to the record making cycle, where you've got 18 months, where you've got to make a record, release it, tour it, make another record, release it, tour it. You're not having all of your life experience poured into records 2, 3, 4, right? Where it is poured into record 1. So naturally, there's going to be some kind of magic in a first release that does what it does and hits people at the right time. And this is such a thing about music, and such a thing about music releases. Timing is almost, 70-80% of it. There are songs that come out that people are just looking for at that moment in time, and the collective experience of getting that all together, it explodes into something. And I agree with you. It's a bit of an anchor. When you have something that's that successful as your first project, it takes on such legendary status that you can never ever go back and beat that, which is really unfortunate for any band. I worked with Daniel Johns and Silverchair, and they had this massive first record that they did when they were 14, 15 years old. And from that point on in their entire career, that's all people ever wanted, was them to make that same record again. And like any artist, like when Ron and Lois at the Low released Shakespeare in My Butt, they were young men, right? They were early in their career. They had a whole lot more to say, but the music industry doesn't ever want you to evolve and grow. They want you to do the same thing over and over and over again. And bands that do that, AC/DC, right? I love that band. They're great. They make the same record over and over again, and people love that, right? And they're very successful at doing that, but you wouldn't call that any kind of creative evolution. Whereas in Ron's case, and in other musicians' case, they constantly want to evolve and say something new. Picasso didn't stay in his blue period or in his cubist period, and I'm not necessarily equating Lois to the Low with Picasso, but any artist is going to evolve. Any artist is going to want to say something different. And so for an industry that sometimes hampers that or restricts that and wants you to just kind of feed the same machine with the same food every time. I know I'm mixing metaphors terribly here, but I think you understand what I'm saying, is that the artist that's not allowed to evolve and change and create new things is going to be a very frustrated artist. And I think that records like Shakespeare in My Butt, being so successful on the first run, are great as career starters, but later on they end up being almost more of a drawback.
Absolutely. So, a bit of a heady question, but what do you think the magic of Lois the Low?
I think, like always, the magic lies in the relationships in between the band members. You know, and as you said, it's changed over the years, but there's always been that thing between Ron and Dave, right? They're like an old married couple. They've worked together so long, and there is that you know, the saying that there's some of the parts, sorry, I'm going to forget it, but the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And in this case with this band, that's exactly what it is. Like, you know, you take, you know, Lawrence, or you take Mike, or you know, any of these guys that have certain abilities and certain qualities, but you put it all together, you blend it up into this wonderful stew, and it becomes something more than that. And I think that's the magic of the band. You know, obviously Ron is an amazing performer, an amazing writer, but these guys all kind of join in around him and make it more than just that thing, because, you know, again, Ron's got lots of different creative outlets as well, the Do Good Assassins and Busty Nails and things like that. So, you know, he's got different outlets for it, but when Lois of the Low make their thing, it grows in a way that would only happen with that group of individuals.
Last question. The legacy. What will they leave behind?
I think in a way what Lois of the Low will leave behind is a musical code of conduct. The way that they write, the way that the stories they tell, the issues they highlight, along with the what I think is really accessible music and fun to listen to, you know, it's a way to seep into people's consciousness the, you know, the ethical code that they have and the code of conduct that they have. And I think that probably will be their legacy when you listen back to their music, and people will talk about their music, you know, in the future. They'll say, you know, these people were telling us a story and highlighting what's wrong with the world, and not necessarily a call to action, but just, yeah, code of conduct.
That's awesome. Anything to close with? That's a horrible question. I hate when people ask that question, but seems like you might have some more in the tank.
I don't know that I have anything more to say. I would say though that you know, making the project together was a really wonderful experience, and we gained, I think, not only, you know, something that we're all very proud of musically, but we all became really good friends at the same time. So that's always a bonus when you get that, and you know, you stay in touch with people that way. So that's something that I'm really happy to have had happen on this product.
Not enough crying. No crying. Damn it.
No crying.
I said crying.
I said I wouldn't cry.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Okay.
Awesome.
No problem.